Cassandra Iannucci and Alex Green are both part of Deakin's Students as Partners initiatives. In this episode, they discuss how, together, they're reshaping the way that students and staff collaborate, putting equity and lived experience at the centre and creating real change in higher education. From the lands of the Wadawurrung people, this is Stories of Wonder. Cassandra, Alex, welcome to Stories of Wonder.
Thanks for having us.
Pleasure. All right, Cassandra, let's start with you. I'm hoping that, could you give us a simple overview of what the Students as Partners initiative is and what it aims to achieve?
Sure. Really, at its core, Students as Partners or Student-Staff Partnership shifts the focus from doing things for students to doing things with students. So it recognizes the unique expertise that students bring, and that's their lived experience. And you engage in a collaboration, which eventually and intentionally leads to better outcomes, more inclusive experiences, and things that are just more meaningful because they're made in co-decision making with students and staff together.
Yeah, right. And how did you first get involved with it?
Well, I've always been drawn to relational pedagogy. So the idea that we learn in relationship with each other, it's a community of practice, really. And so it's a core pillar of my teaching and learning philosophy. And through also being introduced to ideas of decolonizing my practice, I was able to commit to thinking about how I understand power and voice and whose knowledge is valued within a teaching and learning context. And so I would like to really just acknowledge our First Nations colleagues and how we can learn a lot from them about deep listening, about relationships, and about community. And that's what Student-Staff Partnership is. So really I came to it from a value of recognizing my students as partners and thinking about how I can create a community and lean hard into relationships first as a grounding for then learning to occur.
Alex, how did you get involved and what drew you into it?
I first got involved in 2021. I joined the Students Mentoring Staff project as a student mentor, and that fed into a microgrant project with, I think, who is now the Digital Learning Futures team, to look at redesigning the Deakin Sync online unit site to make it more accessible for students. I was looking for work that went beyond a lot of the traditional casual roles we think of as being for students. I think I'd pulled enough pints of Guinness by that point. And I was also looking for a way to feel more connected to uni. I was an online student at the time, and I think for a lot of neurodivergent students, they feel that a lot of traditional work styles won't be suited for them. So the idea that this would not only be flexible and accessible for me as a student with autism, but directly valued my input was an exciting thing to be part of. And here I am, all these years later.
Yeah, so you were an online student when
yes,
you heard
back
about
in
this.
the day.
And how did you hear about it?
Through Deakin Talent, so where students find out about listings, including work integrated learning and student roles at Deakin. So I was pretty habitually combing through that for something that I could do online.
Yeah, cool. Cassandra, what does an authentic student-staff partnership look like in action?
This is a really good question. I think about student-staff partnership as a relationship, and it is. And just like you would think about a good friendship or a colleague, it takes time to build trust. You don't start by diving into your deepest problem. You take time, you listen, you get to know each other, you have dialogue, and it's in that space that you can then lean into curiosity and and open up more meaningful dialogue and problem solving together. And it's the same when we're looking at authentic student-staff partnership. It's built on trust. So oftentimes that takes time to establish.
Yeah.
It takes vulnerability because you need to show up as a whole human person if you're expecting whomever you're working with or establishing that partnership or relationship with to also show up as a whole human person. It has to be a shared learning space. So just like that reciprocity of I'm showing up with vulnerability as well and we're engaging in that dialogue, you're coming from a learner first perspective. So if you're coming into a student-staff partnership and it's not genuine, you already have the answers or you know what you want the answer to be or what you want a co-created, and I'll say that in air quotes because this wouldn't be genuine.
Yeah.
But you already have what the outcome looks like in practice. So in order for it to be authentic, you need to come as a learner first. And again, we lean on our Indigenous ways of knowing and our colleagues who have shared in the practice of partnership for tens of thousands of years. So it is a learner first perspective. It's relational, it's dialogic, and it's built on care fundamentally, isn't it? Where you care to know about the other person, you care to know about what the student has to say, you care about their experience, you care about them as a person. So you're not only creating a space that nurtures a relationship, but you're caring. I think really at the heart of it, that is a genuine student-staff partnership practice. It has to be built on that notion of care and compassion and community and trust, and it takes time to build and nurture.
And I guess like to be able to create spaces like that in all of these kind of, I don't know, interactions, these shared sort of learning opportunities, it's not going to be for every staff member or they need to be prepared to kind of do, like, how does that work in I don't know, onboarding the right staff members and matching them with the kind of the right students? What's that process like?
Yeah, it's a really good question. What we have in the Students as Partners program here at Deakin is really leading nationally because we have a variety of student-staff partnership projects that all require different levels of investment, different capacities to engage in that genuine relationality. And so therefore, different entry points really is how we like to talk about it here at Deakin, where a staff member who is curious and committed to recentering the student or the student voice in their practice, but doesn't yet feel confident that they can create that safe enough space or that they can show up with vulnerability if it challenges their traditional grasp on authority or control or power within a teaching and learning space, they can come into one of our student-staff partner programs or initiatives that is a little bit of a lighter touch. So we can meet staff where they're at, and the same for students. So we have to rebuild trust with our students. And so we can't expect all students to feel comfortable diving into a deep relational practice with a staff member if there isn't that trust there.
Yeah.
And so we can suggest a lower or a lighter touch partnership opportunity to start to build that trust in the staff partner and in the university system, that it's genuinely here to listen and to co-create and to respond in decision-making context to what the student lived experience is telling us.
Yeah, right. Cool. So there's a bit of a almost like, I don't know, you can try, not before you buy, but you can try a little bit and see, find your feet a little bit before you jump into something that might be a bit more weighty and meaty and see if you're ready to be vulnerable. Alex, tell us about a moment where you saw your input directly influence a university process or decision that affects students.
I mean, look, I could point to points of impact in any of the projects I've been fortunate to be a part of. We've made adaptations to the variety of formats that students can view their learning resources in online. That was one I was very proud of from that first microgrant. We've seen a lot of adaptation to language from projects I've been part of, such as changes to the Evaluate survey, which Cassandra and I partnered on last year, changes internally to how we talk about study abroad opportunities for students. But I actually think the most tangible shift I've seen is in how the staff that I've partnered with interact with students moving forward. I've been able to go on to partner with a lot of the staff leads that I've worked with in projects outside of students as partners, and just seeing the shift in how they show up to class and meet students where they're at, as Cassandra says, to me is probably the most valuable.
Right. Are there any examples of like, I don't know, how certain teachers or tutors have sort of changed their strategies on how to connect with some of their students?
I think it's more of an attitude. As Cassandra said, it's partly about staff who are ready to be vulnerable. And I think seeing that we can all get very connected to the work that we produce. You know, when you're close to it, it's hard to see it objectively. So I think seeing staff be a little less defensive about what they're bringing to students and just giving students the opportunity to share their thoughts has been humbling, I would say. I think, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And Cassandra, how do these kind of initiatives come about? Like the things that, you know, you can choose to have people partner on to I don't know, change? Is there, you know, student outreach prior? Do students express an interest? And I guess the same with staff. You went into it a little bit there, but like how do they even hear about this?
Yes. So one of the key features of our suite of initiatives and programs is that none of them are mandatory. None are required for staff to engage with or students to engage with. And I personally really appreciate that because it restricts, it prevents disingenuine engagement with the programs. And because they're all opt-in or voluntary, there is an expression of interest form for most of our projects or programs, but it really depends on what initiative we're talking about and where in that scaffold partnership experience a staff wants to sort of get engaged with. If it is on the lighter touch, dip your toe in type of a thing, we do have a co-created and student-led podcast where students are in dialogue, sharing some of their experiences framed through what they wish their lecturers or educators knew. So you can tune in to that on any.
Should we let's get a little a little super there with the name of it. What's it called?
Voices from the Classroom, What I Wish My Lecturer Knew.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
So it's students talking about this. Yeah, right.
That's right. Students are hosting the podcast, talking with other students who are sharing their lived experience. And that requires nothing but tuning in to anywhere that podcasts are live, and you can listen to stories and really humanize your students in your own classroom or lean into that curiosity without having to engage in dialogue with students. So there's no barriers at all to engaging with that program. We then have other programs like, for example, our Students Mentoring Staff program, where an open call expression of interest is put out to any staff member in the university, professional staff, academic staff, casual staff, and you can express interest in participating. We don't gatekeep, really. The program is there for you to be involved in. For that one, students, we have a targeted cohort of students for the Students Mentoring Staff program. And so we will open that program up for students who are registered in the Disability Resource Centre or through the Disability Resource Centre. But other programs we then put on Target Connect, which is, Alex, you were reflecting on how you first came to Students Have Partnership. And those are those programs. So it really depends on what the initiative is. There's really low barrier and then a little bit more of a assessment process through which the staff might submit a project idea, and then it goes through an assessment panel and rubric to receive funding. So again, the deeper the partnership, the I guess more thorough the process is to ensure that it is a genuine partnership project and that staff and students are going to have a good experience.
Yeah, cool. And what are the limits of what a student can mentor, a staff member on? Like, is it everything from, building empathy with, people with different, abilities or, different lived experiences, all the way to like how to use TikTok? Like, what are the kind of lines we're drawing in between here?
It could be. It really is open in that Students Mentoring Staff program in particular. Some students come into the program with something in particular they want to educate.
So they can come in with something that they're proposing
or they just come in with an interest to share their experience and maybe respond. So we had some students come into the Students Mentoring Staff program who love the idea that there's interest from a staff perspective to understand their lived experience, and that's enough. So they come into the program and just engage, and the conversation goes wherever it goes. The academic or the teaching staff or the professional staff, whomever it is, might say, hey, I've been really curious about what it's like to, or what was your experience of this aspect of the university? And the conversation goes from there. We do support our students and our staff engaging in any of our programs. So for our Students Mentoring Staff, we provide examples of safe conversations, what's appropriate, what's not appropriate. For example, not appropriate to ask for disclosure. Why are you registered with the Disability Resource Centre? What's your disability? Or it's not appropriate. So we really support our students and staff to make sure it's safe. We provide activities that students and staff might use, like a would you rather teaching and learning edition or would you rather assessment edition? And it creates a fun entry point to dialogue, and then the conversations go where they need to go. And of course, that's not required. Dialogue can just happen naturally if both students and staff are willing.
Why is it important that this program has an equity first lens? Maybe you first, Alex.
That's a big one. I suppose we're trying to provide a platform for student voices who are often not allowed into the room or not offered a seat at the table. I think students can tell when we engage with them in a way that is not authentic, and creating this sort of safe third space for students within Deakin has been, from my personal experience, humanising, confidence building, capacity building. But I think we're really trying to prioritise, as I said, student voices that are often left out of the conversation, because those are often the students who need direct support and are missing out on that relational aspect of what it is to be at university. So, privileging that space for those students.
Yeah, that's so important. How do you ensure that students from equity cohorts are supported and empowered rather than tokenized? Because I suppose that's the risk sometimes, depending on, it's an opt-in kind of experience, but you don't want it to seem transactional, right?
I think depending on the project, part of the work we do at the beginning is ensuring that staff have intentions to engage authentically in partnership with students. So ensuring we're not at risk of them becoming research assistants or just sort of sounding boards or tick boxes to say that staff have, engaged in partnership. So Cassandra, maybe you wouldn't mind speaking to sort of how we prioritise staff who are trying to engage authentically in partnership, I suppose.
Yeah, and I might even take a step back. I think when we think about universities, they were originally designed for a small group of privileged, white, upper-class men. And we still see echoes of that in our systems and the ways that universities are run today. And through our partnership practices and our equity first lens, it allows us to really step into believing that it's our responsibility as a university to change. So it's not about preparing students for a university that doesn't work for them. It's about co-creating a university that is for the people. And I think about conversations that are happening now about social licensing to educate. And that requires that we have trust in the people of the community. And the only way for us to do that is to care about our students and to show that we are responsive, we are listening, we are committed to co-creating a university that is for the community. And the community is more and more diverse. Thankfully, in a university, this is something that we need to celebrate and remove barriers and really step into the responsibility of creating a space that is built for and with, and that's where partnership comes in, with the students that we want to serve in the university. And so, yes, to what you were saying, Alex, it's really important. An equity first perspective allows us to look around the room and say, who's not here? How are we reinforcing in equitable practices? And why? You know, what are the system barriers that are not meaning this table is a diverse perspective and we're making decisions together rather than for? And so one of the things that we do in our program is a low barrier entry into student-staff partnership. So what that means for a student when they apply through Deakin Talent, they don't need to upload a CV. They don't have to have previous work experience. It's you being a student qualifies you for this role. Yeah. It's your lived experience that we value and welcome you into the program for to share. So one, we have a low barrier entry into the Student Staff Partnership program, and we pay our students. So we recognize that volunteering requires economic capital. You know, it's a privilege to volunteer. It means you have time, you have money, you have the connections to be in the right place, you have transportation. There's so many privileges layered in an assumption that students can volunteer. And so we pay or remunerate all of our student partners. And that helps to ensure that equity cohort students are supported in student staff partnership and are genuinely removing as many barriers as we can to be decision makers at the table. We also hire from an equity first perspective, which is really important to us. And in order for any projects that seek funding, any partnership projects that seek funding from our program, needs to evidence that the outcomes of the program are going to support the teaching and learning and student outcomes of equity cohort students. So it needs to show that it's improving accessibility, it's considering different ways of working, it's asking the question, who is this privileging, who is it not, in an attempt to really amplify otherwise silenced or marginalized voices.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And it really, instead of putting the onus on, the students, you're actively looking for who's not here, who's missing, what voice aren't we hearing right now. Alex, if you're comfortable, could you tell us a little bit about how your lived experience has sort of shaped your role and your participation in this initiative?
You like the big questions, don't you? I'm very proudly a member of both the queer and the disabled community. And I do think my personal identity in that space inherently lends itself to advocacy. So there's a reason that the students we partner with are not only passionate about improving the experience for other students, but they have lived experience in needing to adapt and change their way of thinking and change the language they use. And I actually think a lot of the staff we partner with can learn from students in that way. Mm-hmm. I also think that lived experience can create a safe space for other students. So other students who identify in those communities can sort of see themselves reflected in students who have been able to make, significant change at the university. And it's sort of an opportunity for students to impact decisions that directly affect them. Yeah.
Has your involvement in this initiative shaped your career aspirations in any way? Has it opened any doors for you?
Absolutely. I mean, I'm currently very fortunate to be working in the Students as Partners team with Cassandra and the wonderful Sam Geddes. Shout out to Sam. So I'm working as an officer in the Students as Partners team, sort of as that first point of contact for students. So it's been a very gratifying graduation from my work as a student partner. And I would also say I learn from every student we work with on a daily basis.
Yeah, nice. Cassandra, what are some tangible changes that you've seen across the university as a result of this work?
Like, how long do you have? Because we genuinely could sit here for way longer than reasonable to list through some of the changes or impacts that partnership have had on the university. I can start by thinking personally, and something you said earlier, Alex, reminded me of like even the most micro thing makes a big difference. We have a program called Coffee Conversations, and this is one of the only student staff partnership programs in the whole country that brings partnership into the teaching and learning space. So it's something that we're really proud of, because what we found historically is that students are asked to give feedback on the unit, on their experience of a unit at the end of a trimester, which is amazing. It's important to amplify that student experience. But what it doesn't do is impact that student, because they're providing feedback after their experience is done.
Right. That's probably the last thing that they want to do when they've like wrapped up a whole unit.
Right. Well, some students are passionate and want to improve the experience of the students who come after them. But it was a problem that we wanted to solve, because students have lived experience, they have opinions, they have feedback, and we need to listen and inform our practice as we go through the trimester. So we created this Coffee Conversations program where teaching staff and students, a small group of students, and it changes each week depending on who signs up or who's available to come along. We shout coffee or any hot beverage or any cold beverage for that matter. Free coffee from the on-campus cafe. You walk over after class, sit down, have a bit of a yarn, over a cup of coffee. Students share who they are as a teaching staff. You share who you are. You could talk about anything. And the conversation usually, with the relational first lens, ends up talking about some feedback and student experience. And then what we can do is listen to that feedback, make changes to our practice for the next week of classes. And then you stand up there in front of this class each week and say, hey, I heard what you said last week. You wanted more of this. So today I've put more of that in my class. And the students can then see that we're tightening that feedback loop. So when we're talking about partnership requiring trust building, every single week when we're evidencing that you're giving me feedback, I'm listening, and we're making these decisions together to improve your experience of teaching and learning and your teaching and learning outcomes, students are more and more engaged and trusting in you and in the process.
Yeah.
But what I learned from participating in that practice, even the small thing, like realizing that I keep so much a secret of my practice and the university. So students will be coming and saying, hey, this deadline for this assignment is not working for me. Like, okay, to be honest, it's not working for me either. But here's the policy. So let's sit down together and say, okay, using your experience, using what's in the Deakin assessment policy, how can we solve this problem together? And I realized that I was making decisions that weren't working for students because of particular systems and requirements, but not telling students. So that dialogue was missing.
Yeah.
So even little things like that, I'm more forthcoming to share what is usually hidden or secret knowledge behind closed doors with my students. And that builds trust and it builds relationships. But that's just a very small example. But it's something that does matter. Other things that we've done, we see assignments being co-created.
Oh,
Right?
cool.
Very excited about this
Right?
one.
What's an example? Where have they tried that?
Oh, multiple places across the university.
Okay.
So we've had a couple of faculties do partnership projects with their students where students in that unit are sitting down with the unit chair and co-creating the assessment
Wow.
in the unit. Sometimes we have examples of students who have finished the unit and who are currently in the unit and who are coming into the unit. So if it's a core unit, we might have the next year's cohort students join that partnership and they sit down together and say, hey, let's co-create this assessment task. So that not only is the task itself genuinely seen as meaningful, relevant, and worthwhile to the student, but there's also this relationality that's built into it. Other students then trust that, hey, this was designed by my peers with my best interest. And so they lean in harder to the assessment. It's so cool. Like, it's so cool. Why don't we do it more often?
Yeah.
And it could just be a rubric. You could co-create a rubric. And I get excited about teaching and learning because it's my heart. But we have so many examples across the university. Having things accessible in, like, feminine products in toilets for free.
Of course, yeah.
Right? Something that was student initiated and led and done in partnership. We have examples of co-creating media products that support students to see possibilities and career trajectories and pathways from a degree, connecting with industry partners. We see, what are some of your favorite things that you've seen across the university?
Oh gosh, I'm thinking even just of this year, assessment templates and rubrics is a big one. Obviously,
massive.
very excited to see the podcast coming into fruition.
Was that student ideated as well, or was that an initiative born out of, this initiative, and then sort of handed down?
That one was staff initiated. That was born of recognizing the problem of partnership requires safety, and not all staff are safe to share stories with from a student perspective.
Yeah.
But we still want those staff to have access to lean into that curiosity and to start to understand the student experience. So we said, hey, we need something that's really low barrier for staff to engage with, but we are absolutely not creating that from it needs to be student-led and co-created with students. So then we hired student partners to create what will this look like? And the creation of deciding it was going to be this podcast, this was going to be the aims, this is how we're going to run, this is how we're going to communicate with students, this is how we're going to edit, was all a partnership with students.
Yeah.
We've also had the fantastic student-initiated project this year, which has been developing a module through the Students Helping Students division to support neurodivergent students in the classroom. So that's a fantastic resource. And that was a student who approached us and said, this work needs to be done and I think this is the right space.
So another tangible change that I've seen is that more and more staff are seeking partnership opportunities, which is really cool because it's normalizing student-staff partnership practices. And if word of mouth is spreading, something's happening. good tangible outcomes are happening. Students are talking about their experience. Staff are hearing it. They get curious. They want to be involved.
Yeah.
They want to have that same engagement with their students or those same quality of relationships with their students. And then we're seeing it become business as usual. So as an example, drawing on coffee conversations that I was talking about, we fund those coffee conversations when you're a part of the program. We often have staff come up to us now and say, hey, it's just what I do with every class now. You know?
Yeah, nice.
It's not, they don't even get funding from the program. It has just become their business as usual.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah. And it's probably less and less of a lift as you go forward to even try and get people on board. They're more aware of it and more people will be looking for opportunities to do this.
And they trust, right?
Right.
They trust. So we have to establish that trust. And it takes time and it takes repeated, genuine responses to students sharing their experience, their voice, their ideas, their feedback, their perspectives, making decisions together and leading to tangible outcomes. And then we know it's not a waste of time or it's not just tokenistic or it's not just lip service. The Deakin staff and the Deakin University broadly really does care about what the student has to say.
Yeah, that's so cool. Looking ahead, beyond structural change, what does it mean for students to feel heard, to feel valued, and to kind of feel part of the Deakin community? Nice, massive question there for someone to answer.
I saw you look at me and go, no, don't look at me. I'm thinking. I think I started my university journey only a decade ago. And even back then, before COVID, it felt like there was a stronger sense of community on campus and there was a stronger sense of relationality between students and staff. I can remember going from a 4 p.m. seminar, or toot as they call them in Queensland, and going to the uni bar afterwards with my lecturer and talking about the assignment while we played pool. So I do think sometimes that sense of community is dwindling, and there's upsides of that now that online education is so accessible, but I think we could be doing more to support our online students in getting involved in that sense. So as a bit of a roundabout answer to your question, I suppose, I would say to any staff who are sitting there going, why don't we see students on campus anymore? Why don't students want to engage? Think about how you could be the reason they're excited to come to class. Think about how you can be the community that they crave on campus.
Yeah, and think about how you can make them feel like you see them, right?
Yes, absolutely. And you see them beyond the two-dimensional role of who they are in your classroom.
Yeah.
It actually brings tears to my eye when I think about this question and what it means. Like, what does it mean for students to feel heard, valued, part of a community? Like, it's everything.
Yeah.
It's everything. We are humans. Students are.
Yes.
It's a fundamental need. We need to feel seen and heard and valued and part of a community. So words that come to mind are belonging, dignity, confidence, yes, community. Oh, gosh, it's powerful. And if we just put ourselves in that position, what does it mean for me to be heard and for me to feel valued? It's so motivating and inspiring, and it makes any partnership practice welcoming, because I want my students to feel this way. I want my students to want to come. I want to be one of many reasons students want to be involved or want to be at Deakin, want to come to class. They want to talk to each other. They want to know that they come to a place where they're seen as a whole person, not just a number, not just a student, not just a name.
Not just a grade.
Not just a grade. Oh, all those things. Yeah, I want my students to know that I see them, that I know that they're balancing a million things, that they have had to make a really hard decision to come to class because it meant that they didn't do something else in a long list of things that need to happen. I mean, we're adults, we're all living in this high cost of living world, and no one's feeling it more than our students. So, humanizing. Yeah, it's really humanizing.
Great answers. All right, we've got some hopefully less heavy questions now as we go to start wrapping up. Alex, I'm looking at you again. What's one skill that you've gained from this initiative that you didn't expect?
I would probably say I don't know that there's any skills I wasn't expecting to develop, partly because going for these opportunities was very intentional in carving a path to sort of what my career might look like post-university. So I would say, if anything, it's strengthened a lot of existing skills, collaboration, teamwork, adapting my language. But, you asked earlier if my experience as a student partner has increased my graduate employability. Absolutely, yes. And further to Cassandra's point, yes, I've developed, soft and technical skills as a student partner, but the personal and professional confidence is what made me feel like I could take the next steps. So I'm now sitting on external committees, working groups. We've travelled for conferences. I'll be co-authored by the end of my degree. And yes, Students as Partners is a space that offered that opportunity, but more than anything, it was a space of, we believe you can do this. So give it a go. It was sort of a safe space for students to make mistakes and flex their muscles, I suppose. So I would absolutely not be in my current role, and I certainly wouldn't be sitting here if it hadn't been for Cassandra and Sam and the staff involved in the projects to go, well, give it a go and we'll be here at the end either way. So I'm trying not to get emotional now, but...
Please do it. Let's get a close-up on Alex.
Slow tear.
That's so cool though. Like, that's amazing. And I think that's what, through this podcast as well, we're learning is that if you have the opportunity to sort of like do it before you have to go out into the world and do it, you can do it by the time you kind of like, leave the campus.
And they might be industry-specific skills. I've been involved in thematic analyses and report writing. So yes, it's great to do tasks that I envision in my career and go, okay, great to know that not only do I actually enjoy this, but I think I might be okay at it. But it's also just being seen as a peer, having pretty senior staff in the university turn to you and go, well, what do you think? I've spoken to Cassandra at length before about how I think there's a bit of a preconceived notion that university will shape you into something useful and you're here as a blank slate to be turned into a productive member of society. But students and staff alike are coming to campus every day with a whole wealth of experience behind them already. So use it. Yeah.
Gosh, if we could prepare every student for the first, well, what do you think in a career where you're like,
and you know what?
Am I ready for this?
But I remember the first time I was asked that, and I don't think I'll forget it. It already feels like a turning point,
Yeah.
Yes.
Amazing. Cassandra, what's a moment that made you feel proud to be part of this program? You've spoken of many really today, but like,
great question.
give us one.
I know there's so right now, like what's more, you can probably tell that I'm really passionate about this work.
I'm not really getting that.
Not getting it? No, I think I need to be a little bit more dramatic. I really care deeply about the work that this type of practice. Students have partnership is not the only way to build trust and relationships and community and belonging and to empower students and staff to make decisions, to value our experience, our knowledge, our perspectives, and to come together to collaborate on, shaping what a university looks like. But it's a pretty darn powerful way to do that. Like, it is a tool that we have, and we've, as I mentioned before, I'm really proud. We actually just won an award. So shameless plug, we won an international award for leadership in student voice.
Wow.
Yeah.
Cool. The whole crew's clapping.
This is but it's an award that is for the whole university because it's all of our students, all of our staff, everyone who's been involved in engaging with this practice and developing the program to what it is. But it is something that I'm proud of. We have different ways to engage in what it means to not the language that's used in the field is often to democratize higher education. And yes, that's true. I think of it as returning and learning from our Indigenous colleagues and really recentering the values of country, of land, of respect, relationship, dialogue, coming together as community. So any single moment that I see a student partner step into their worth, like step into what I already know and believe them to be capable of doing, or you see a staff partner, or I walk through the cafe. How cool is this, Alex, when you're like walking through the cafe and you see a coffee conversation happening and you're like, yes, like that is so cool. We are living and breathing it as a university. Of course, we have room to improve. We are constantly learning and we haven't got it dead right yet, but we're absolutely moving in the right direction.
Yeah, amazing. Final question to you, Alex. What is one thing that you wish more staff understood about students?
Ooh, stay tuned for the podcast. No.
All right, that's it.
I think that we want to know where you're coming from. We want to know the motivation behind how you structured the unit. We want to know what obstacles you're coming up against. I think we need to bring the human aspect back to higher education a little bit, and that goes both ways. So I think don't keep students in the dark just because you've been taught that that's what that hierarchical relationship should look like. Pull the curtain back a little bit for students, help them understand some of your decision making, and don't be afraid to bring that vulnerability into the classroom with you because it makes you a better educator.
Yeah, right. And that's important because there's also dialogue internally, but within the field more broadly, that leaning into some vulnerability and humanizing yourself in the process of engaging with students will mean that you lose respect and control and authority.
Yeah.
And the opposite is so true, right?
Yeah.
Like as we become human and we establish relationships, then there's genuine trust and genuine respect that's reciprocal. It's not something to fear. But I think that is scary for some people. But to know and to hear you say how important it is from a student perspective that staff are showing up as human and bringing that to their practice, I think is a powerful message.
Well, it's a great initiative and it's nice to hear that, you could walk around the campus and even see some of the tangible results. And so all the best of luck for it continuing into the future. Thank you so much, Cassandra and Alex, for coming on Stories of Wonder.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thanks for having us.